Okay, settle down. Now we're all gathered here today to come up with our next big idea. So, hit me. What do we got? I've heard hybrid coasters are quite cool. I see a lot of people talking about those. Hybrid coasters, Jeff? What are you, 5? You're fired. Get out of here. No. Thorpe Park needs something big. It needs something exciting. It needs a sequel. Oh, cool. So like another Swarm attraction or something. That's actually really cool. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I couldn't hear you. I thought you were fired. Now get out of here. Go. Scram. Ladies and gentlemen on the board, I give to you the next big step in coaster evolution. This could be a lot closer than we think. You know, they've proven themselves, you know, very much capable. You know, Merlin in general. This is something that, you know, I have wanted for Thorpe Park, you know, for literally ages. What's up, guys? I hope you're all well. Welcome back to yet another video on the channel, and today I'm in a little bit of an odd location. I'm actually in my bedroom. I'm kind of trialling out this kind of new setup that I've got. Normally I have my green screen behind me and I kind of do a lot of that in kind of post-production and whatever. You know, it's going to evolve over time, hopefully. I'm going to kind of want to get some like theme park pictures to put up either side of me here. But yeah, if you guys like it, definitely let me know down in the comments below, and if there's anything you guys would like me to put up on the wall or you'd like to see, definitely let me know as well. So, Thorpe Park's next roller coaster. This is a video that I actually wasn't planning on doing, and I wasn't planning on doing, you know, for a long while at that. You know, obviously we literally just had Hyperia open last season, you know, so it kind of felt a bit out of place to start talking about another roller coaster already. But as some of you may already know, I visited Thorpe Park to do a winter construction update last week. If you guys haven't checked that video out, definitely go and give it a look. It's in a playlist that's linked down below. But whilst doing that video, I kind of was discussing a little bit about, you know, the plans that Thorpe Park have released over the last few months regarding a new hotel, and also as well as that the rework of the beach. And it's actually led me to be kind of thinking quite a bit about Thorpe Park's next coaster. So in today's video I'm going to kind of go over like the top 4 coasters that I'd like to see at Thorpe Park, why I think they could be coming, as well as some, you know, themes that we could potentially see at Thorpe Park, and kind of going in depth on you know, what I think could fit at the park, where we could potentially see it kind of location wise. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure to like and subscribe. I absolutely love every single one of you guys. I know I say this every single week, but I do appreciate everyone who's subscribed and keeps coming back to the channel. It really means a lot to me. You guys mean the absolute world. So yeah, if you guys like theme parks or just kind of interested in the industry in general, hopefully you can find something that you enjoy on here. I've got loads of different videos. Like I said, I've got a playlist link below that has some of my past videos in it as well. So without further ado, I think it's time to discuss the first coaster. Okay then, so the first coaster I have on my list today is something that I guarantee you most people will not be surprised about if you've kind of been in the theme park community within the UK over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, and that is an RMC. Now this is a very kind of iconic thing for Thorpe Park. Everyone was talking about an RMC pre-Hyperia, you know, kind of 2021 backwards. This was the one thing everybody wanted at Thorpe Park, and ultimately we didn't end up getting it, but at the end of the day, I still think this is worth kind of bringing up into conversation. Now, if you don't know what an RMC is, RMC stands for Rocky Mountain Construction. They're a roller coaster manufacturer, and their kind of most famous ride that they kind of manufacture and build for people is a hybrid coaster. Now, what these basically are is they mix wood with metal, and you kind of get these really cool kind of layouts that have a lot of kind of thrilling elements like inversions because of the metal elements, but they also have a really nice wooden stylistic design that I think is really appealing. Now, having something like this I think would genuinely be really valuable at Thorpe Park, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, loads of people have already said this before, but it would be a UK's first coaster. There isn't a hybrid coaster currently within the UK. I think it's a really good draw for Thorpe Park. We know Merlin likes to do these big record breaking, you know, coasters a lot of the time, so it would be a perfect opportunity, you know, to have one of those with it just by it existing. You know, you don't usually get that with coasters. There's a lot of different coasters in the UK now. It's not very often that you get a coaster that's like, right, we haven't got one of these in the UK yet. I mean, obviously Hyperia was very much like that. You know, we haven't got another hypercoaster in the UK, so that was very much a similar type of situation. So I think Thorpe Park, considering this, definitely isn't out of the question, and I do think it would be a really nice draw for Thorpe Park. I think it's a very interesting design. I think it would fit on the Thorpe Park skyline tremendously well, and of course there's some really good opportunities for some awesome layouts as well. Like I said, you know, these are a lot more versatile than a wooden coaster, and I also think the fact that Wicker Man over at Alton Towers has been so successful, it's proven that these kind of you know, wooden style roller coasters are really popular, and you can do some really interesting stuff with the themes. So I think an RMC would be very valuable for Thorpe Park to have. Okay then, so the next roller coaster on this list, and my personal favourite, is a multi-launch coaster. Now this is something that, you know, I have wanted for Thorpe Park, you know, for literally ages, ever since I've been an enthusiast, and I'm still yet to experience one. Those of you that don't know what a multi-launch coaster is, they're essentially a roller coaster with multiple launches in them. The biggest example of this, I would probably say, is of course Icon over at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. That is a multi-launch coaster, and of course the recently opened Velocicoaster over at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, that is also a multi-launch coaster. So one of these, I think, you know, is something I've always wanted to ride on, and I've always wanted at Thorpe Park. You know, and particularly with that island next to Swarm being such a compact space, they are often known as being very compact coasters. You know, Taron over at Phantasialand is a multi-launch coaster. You know, that's kind of quite a compact layout. Velocicoaster, to a certain extent, it's very compact. So I think it's definitely a viable option for Thorpe Park, and it could, depending on how many launches it has, you know, be a UK's first. So I think it would definitely be something that Thorpe Park would, you know, maybe consider. In terms of manufacturers, you know, there's quite a few different options. Multi-launch coasters are quite common now, or as common as they probably were over a couple of decades ago. But you know, they have a lot of different options with who they could maybe get to manufacture the ride if they were to choose to do this kind of coaster. Of course, one of the kind of big mainstays in terms of manufacturing these types of ride is Intamin at the minute. Of course, they opened Jurassic World Velocicoaster a few years ago. That obviously uses LSM technology, as well as a lot of the other manufacturers actually use this now as well. You know, it's kind of more of a controlled launch, not necessarily kind of as kind of mechanically engineered as something like a tyre launch system would be, kind of like Hulk over at Universal Islands of Adventure. That is a tyre launch system, not an LSM launch system, and it's a lot more common to have LSMs now. Even a Mack multi-launch would be really cool. They also adopt LSM technology, so I think it would definitely be a good option for Thorpe Park, and there's lots of kind of variety you can use for theming, you know, and like I said, that compact layout really shines with a multi-launch coaster. So we can only hope, but again, I don't think it would really have the world's first, or you know, the UK's first draw that Merlin are probably wanting from another coaster. You know, with Icon existing, it's kind of a bit more difficult. There's already a mainstay within the UK that's kind of got that pull to it, if that makes sense. You know, I think, you know, Icon is kind of a bit hard to beat out, you know, as opposed to something as just building an RMC, you know, that hasn't existed in the UK at all. They'd kind of had to find a way to, you know, elevate that to another level. But I'm always open to it, and you know, I've always said not everything has to be record breaking, but obviously Merlin think otherwise. So I do think this is probably less likely than an RMC, but I personally would absolutely love one of these at Thorpe Park. Okay, so the next coaster that I'm discussing is one that I don't really see talked about a lot, and I do think is probably one of the most likely that we could potentially see at Thorpe Park, and that is a dive coaster, particularly a B&M dive coaster. I'll explain why in just a second. Of course, if you don't know what these dive coasters are, think Oblivion at Alton Towers. You know, it kind of hangs you over an edge and then drops you however many feet down into the ground, and you know, you kind of do a little bit of a layout afterwards, more traditionally now. Of course, Oblivion kind of is just the go down and come out, whereas a lot of more recent dive coasters do actually have a proper layout. One of the most kind of common examples at the minute is SheiKra over in America. That's a really popular one at the minute. Obviously Baron over in F-Telling is also kind of got a bit of a layout to it. So I think there's a lot of room for Thorpe Park to experiment with this, particularly is the fact that we've only got one other dive coaster within the UK, that being Oblivion. You know, it's a very old dive coaster. It's a very kind of, you know, iconic in its own right. You know, it's very historical, but at the end of the day, I do think that a more modern dive coaster would really work in the UK at the moment, and personally, I think it would have a lot of draw to it as well. Now, of course, with Oblivion kind of, you know, being the only other dive coaster within the UK, it being owned by Merlin, you know, there's a lot of room for there to kind of be some creative input from maybe John Wardley, who, you know, helped design Oblivion way back in the day, but also the fact that, you know, when you think about Oblivion, it's one of those rides that really, like I said, doesn't have a layout at the minute, and I think having a dive coaster in the UK with a layout would be really something special. And of course, particularly working with B&M, who obviously manufacture these dive coasters as well as other companies, you know, I think would be a really great collaboration. You know, Thorpe Park and Alton Towers have worked with B&M a lot in the past, and they also worked with B&M on Oblivion, so I think it would be a really interesting scenario to kind of have Merlin do another dive coaster with B&M, and you know, just kind of see how much the kind of ride type has evolved over these years. I think it would be really interesting, and you know, there's a lot of really cool ideas and interesting themes that you could do with a dive coaster, so I think this would be really attractive to Thorpe Park, and particularly with the space that they've got, that kind of small compact island next to Swarm would be able to house a dive coaster, I think, pretty comfortably. You know, all the kind of main, you know, layout needs for a dive coaster is the going up part and the coming down. The rest is kind of adaptable to however you want it, so it's very much something that would be very easy for Thorpe Park to implement, but obviously whether or not they think that's a big enough draw, you know, is completely up to them. Okay then, so the final coaster I'm going to talk about in today's video is a spinning coaster, which is a very interesting prospect because they're not exactly uncommon at the minute. You know, we've even got one in Chessington in Dragon's Fury, but I do think there's a lot of room for Thorpe Park to do something really clever with something like this. Of course, we've seen family coasters being turned into something quite spectacular in recent years at theme parks within the UK. Of course, the most notable of that is Wicker Man. You know, they took what is essentially a very simple family coaster layout and made it something truly spectacular. And so I think Thorpe Park having a crack at something like that would actually be really useful. And you know, it'd make a really good contrast to, of course, what they've done with Hyperia, with it being a really big kind of scary ride, with it kind of being labelled as, you know, facing your fears and finding your fearless. It'd be nice if their next coaster was maybe a little bit smaller in scale and they really focused on that theming, because I know there was a lot of people that didn't like the fact that Hyperia didn't have any theming really at all. And you know, I can understand that. You know, a lot of people out there ride roller coasters to be immersed in an experience, so I think maybe Thorpe Park having a stab at that, you know, would be a really useful thing. And I think the best kind of ride systems to do something like that with is the more simple stuff. You know, you're not spending as much, you know, on these big kind of crazy, you know, rides that are being manufactured. Instead, you're kind of going on a bit of a smaller scale and then building out a really kind of iconic theming and set pieces, you know, around the ride itself. And I do genuinely think that Island Next to Swarm is absolutely perfect for something like this. You know, again, it doesn't need a lot of space and there's a lot of room to do some theming there. You know, there's a lot of recent success stories with these. Of course, most notably, there's been a spinning coaster called Ride to Happiness, which is of course quite a recent take on a spinning coaster. And even on top of that, we're now getting, you know, a spinning coaster within the Epic Universe theme park that Universal are building over in, you know, Orlando. We're getting a spinning coaster theme to, you know, the Wolfman, which is really, really cool. You know, it's nice to see these spinning coasters get a lot more recognition, and I do think it would be really valuable if Thorpe Park kind of maybe took back the world's first or the UK's first stuff in terms of the actual coaster itself, and maybe working that around the theming, kind of similarly to how they did with Wicker Man. You know, the GCI wooden coaster that Wicker Man isn't exactly special within itself, but it was the first to, you know, merge wood and fire, so maybe we could see Thorpe Park do something similar where it's a simple ride system, but the theming's what really makes it special. Okay then, so with all the coasters down now and we've kind of talked about the nitty gritty stuff, now it's time to talk about the fun stuff, the theming. Now I think there's a lot of opportunities for Thorpe Park to do some great theming pieces. You know, they've proven themselves, you know, very much capable. You know, Merlin in general, you know, Wicker Man, the Swarm, I think they're both really well and brilliantly themed attractions, and I'd absolutely love to see them kind of tackle a more theming heavy attraction like I mentioned when I was talking about the spinning coaster. One theme I think is direly missing in the UK at the moment is a sci-fi theme. Of course, over at Alton Towers we've kind of got a bit of a science fiction theme going on, you know, with Forbidden Valley, with Nemesis and Galactica, but I'm kind of more thinking along the lines of like classic sci-fi, where it's kind of being a little bit more, you know, not necessarily on the goofy side, but it's more kind of lasers and, you know, this kind of grand epic space kind of theme, if that makes sense. I think it's a theme that's very versatile. No matter what kind of coaster you're making, you could probably weave it into, obviously maybe with the exception of an RMC not really fitting with a space theme, but you know, a multi-launch coaster would be perfect for a space theme, a spinning coaster would be perfect, you know, a dive coaster would even work. So I think a space theme is something that we're kind of missing within the UK, so I'd very much love to see something like that be implemented. But on top of that, we also have the opportunity of a Western theme. This is kind of a bit of a dying breed at at the moment, in the UK particularly. You know, we lost Old Town, you know, in favour of building Hyperia, which I will never complain about. As much as I say I miss Old Town, I'm never going to complain about Hyperia being built in its place. I think it was a great investment, but you have got to think about, you know, where else we've got kind of these Western themes. It's not really there. Obviously an RMC would be absolutely perfect with a Western theme, you know, somewhere. But I do think it's an interesting proposition, and I know back when Hyperia, like before that was even announced, there was a lot of people building concepts for multi-launch coasters that were kind of, you know, Western themed. So it's definitely possible, and I would absolutely love to see it. But not as much as the last theme I'm going to discuss, and that is a horror theme. I would absolutely love a horror themed attraction over here in the UK. Of course, you know, like I mentioned just a minute ago, Universal Studios are building Epic Universe, and that has got Dark Universe being featured within it, which has got a brand new dark ride, as well as the spinning coaster themed to the Wolfman. So there's a lot of room, you know, to get excited about that kind of thing. And I'm kind of looking at a lot of the construction that's being done. You know, obviously, you know, Universal's on a lot bigger budget as, you know, Thorpe Park would ever be, but, you know, looking at these kind of different set pieces and theming, I'd absolutely love it. I'd love to see it come to Thorpe Park, you know. I think they're the perfect park to have a horror themed attraction, maybe going to the more fantastical element of horror. Of course, we've seen Alton Towers kind of go down the dark route, you know, with Nemesis, but also Curse of Alton Manor, which of course opened a few years ago. But I do think there is a lot of room for the kind of more fantastical, you know, spooky horror that you don't really usually see anymore. Classic horror is probably a better way of actually saying that, to be fair. But I would absolutely love to see that at Thorpe Park. You know, I'm a massive horror nerd anyway, so seeing an actual kind of area be realised to life with a horror themed roller coaster, count me in. Again, perfect for an RMC, and pretty much perfect from any angle you look at it, really. You know, you've only got to look at the Dark Forest over at Alton Towers. That's very kind of spooky and horror themed, you know, and they managed to fit a launch coaster as well as like a drop track coaster. You know, there's a lot of versatility in that kind of theme, and I think going into the more fantastical side of it, you know, with werewolves, zombies maybe, it'd be a really interesting thing to kind of tackle. You know, vampires even, there's a lot of room, you know, especially with the fact that, you know, we've got Amity and, you know, Lycanthorpe High being the werewolves that are, you know, reside near Thorpe Park. You know, we've seen a lot of that in Fright Nights, so seeing that kind of come to life as a roller coaster, I think that would be really clever, and I think kind of, you know, very unique as well. You know, it's kind of setting itself apart from maybe some of the other horror themed stuff that we've got in the UK. Okay then, so that brings us into the final part of today's video, and that is of course discussing when we could potentially see another roller coaster at Thorpe Park. Now, I do genuinely think this could be a lot closer than we think, and the main reason I do believe this is a lot closer than we think is because of Project Horizon over at Alton Towers. Now, we know Alton Towers alongside Thorpe Park are kind of Merlin's big thrill parks, if you want to call it that. You know, that's kind of where their bigger roller coasters end up going. So it's interesting to see now that with Project Horizon on the horizon, you know, that is an indoor coaster. That's not a secret weapon, and we don't even know if it's a coaster at all. We know it's indoors, and that's about it. So if Alton Towers are going to invest in Project Horizon within the near future, then that doesn't really leave a lot of room for another coaster at Alton Towers for a little bit longer down the line. Now, this obviously means that Thorpe Park may have to carry the torch in terms of, you know, kind of big staple roller coasters for Merlin, and I do think that is kind of where the kind of quickness of them building another coaster kind of lies, because if Alton Towers aren't going to do it, then it only really leaves Thorpe Park. And I do genuinely believe that Merlin will kind of look at that and look at the success of Hyperia and go, okay, Project Horizon over Alton Towers, we'll do something a bit different with that, and then over here at Thorpe Park we'll build another coaster and kind of have that as a flagship coaster for the near future. And I think that's kind of the way and the direction Merlin's heading, you know, but I do think that does leave a lot of room open for Thorpe Park to obviously start building a new coaster within the next few kind of years maybe. I mean, it really depends on how the Thorpe Park Hotel goes. If that goes ahead, then that obviously, you know, kind of shifts focus from a roller coaster a little bit, but I do think even if the Thorpe Park Hotel is built, I don't think it's going to be very long afterwards that they're going to start thinking about a coaster. You know, I think it is very much on the cards. I don't think they want to wait another decade like they did between the Swarm and Hyperia. I think they're going to want to get the ball rolling a little bit quicker. So without further ado, guys, that is the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy it. It's another kind of speculation video again this week. If you guys do want me to kind of go over Project Horizon over Alton Towers as well as Secret Weapon 9, I would be more than happy to do that. You know, it'd be a video that I'd be quite excited about. you know, if you guys want to see it. Other than that, if you guys have any other video ideas, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Of course, we're getting closer and closer to Thorpe Park and all the other theme parks in the UK reopening, which is really, really exciting. So yeah, definitely let me know what you guys want to see when they open. And yeah, without further ado, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you did go on to enjoy it, make sure to like and subscribe. And with that, I'll see you guys next week. See ya.